What are the habits of naturally skinny people? You probably all know people who you feel are naturally skinny and you feel like they eat pretty much whatever they want and they're never really obsessing and tracking their food, and you wonder how they can do it. So in this video, I'm going to give you their tips and tricks in order to be naturally skinny. And I just want to put a little bit of a disclaimer out there that I'm talking about people who are naturally thin without really preoccupying themselves too much about nutrition. Like, I'm not talking about people who have so much nutrition knowledge and eat super healthy and like are really watching what they eat and then who are thin. And also, I'm not talking about the skinny people that just don't eat healthy. They just eat like a bunch of like processed food, a bunch of junk foods, but maybe they undereat, maybe they skip meals, and that's why they're thin. Also, please keep in mind that there is a genetic component to it. Some people will be smaller, some people will be bigger, some people will be taller, some people will be shorter. That's the way it is. But you can influence certain factors with your nutrition. So the first thing I really want to talk about is when you meet a naturally skinny person, you need to remember that you are not seeing all of their meals. I know it may feel like if you're constantly having brunch with like the same friend every Sunday, for instance, and every time they have a huge brunch, you may feel like, well, this person will always eat a lot. But maybe brunch is their only meal of the day, and on the day before, maybe on Saturday, they just had like soups and salads. Like, my point is, you don't know, you're not seeing 100% of what they're eating. And so it's very easy as humans to see this like tiny window of somebody's way of eating and then project that and think that that's how they eat all the time, when in fact, they don't. Also, let's talk about genetics and family habits. So like I said earlier, there is a genetic component to it, but it's actually pretty small. And the fact that it may seem like entire families are thin or entire families are fat is more about the eating habits that the parents have and that they will pass down to their children. So for instance, if I look at my family and my way of eating, my parents always made sure that we had like healthy, balanced meals, that we ate plenty of whole foods, that we drank water at the table, that we had like long family meals and home cooked meals, all of that. Of course, treats were allowed, they weren't banned at all, but it was something that we could have, you know, in moderation when we really felt like it. We weren't having a bunch of processed sweets all day, every day. So I'm not saying this to discourage you if you're a person who hasn't been passed down healthy eating habits. I'm actually saying this to encourage you to learn these habits so you can then be the one to pass them down to your kids and they can pass them down to their kids, etc. It can start with you. So a very big thing that naturally skinny people do is that they practice mindful and intuitive eating. I know I always talk about mindful eating, but it is so important to be able to listen to your body in that way. And naturally thin people will usually rely on their hunger cues and their signals rather than on outside rules and regulations. So that can look like eating a meal even when it's not really time to eat, but they're hungry, so they're gonna eat. That can also look like stopping with their meal even if there's still half of it left on their plate, but since they're full, they're not going to continue. They're also usually very good at knowing what they actually crave and want, and most of the naturally thin people I know can have like meal plans, meal ideas of what they're going to eat, and sometimes be like, you know what, I don't feel like eating that, it's not going to satisfy me in the way I want, so I'm gonna eat something else. And this is also why these naturally thin people can seem to enjoy themselves and eat a lot, maybe during a pizza night and go a little bit overboard, but then the next day they're really gonna listen to what their body is telling them, and maybe they're gonna have lighter, fresher meals with like a bunch of whole foods because that's what their body is going to tell them that they crave. And it's not going to be a, oh, I binge on pizza, so I need to restrict kind of thing. No, it's more going to be a, okay, so I got in a bunch of food that made me feel good emotionally and that satisfied my cravings and like my social interactions. So that was great, but now I'm feeling something that's a little bit more nutrient dense and a little bit lighter so that I can give my body the fuel that it needs. Another important thing that naturally skinny people do is that they have the food abundance mindset. So for them, there is a strong sense of security in knowing that all of the foods that they crave will be available to them, so they don't have to eat everything right now. They can eat a little bit until it doesn't feel good, until it doesn't feel satisfying to them anymore, and then they can save that for later. And even if they can't save it for later, maybe it's like a restaurant or something, they can always go back to that restaurant or have like some other form of food that they enjoy. And being in this abundance mindset is going to let your body know that you can just have food accessible to you when you want to, like when your body gives you the signals. So there's no need to go past your fullness signals. The thing with a lot of people trying to be skinny, going on diets, is that they are going to create this scarcity mindset. And when you're in that mindset, obviously your body wants to protect you, and so it's just going to want to eat all the food it can when it has the opportunity to do so. But again, if you're able to kind of detach and be in a more abundance mindset with food, then paradoxically, you're not gonna crave that food anymore, so you're gonna binge less and then tend to be naturally thinner. Another thing that naturally skinny people have is a balanced view of food. So this means that they aren't gonna be obsessed with food. They're not constantly thinking about their next meal, constantly thinking about what they're gonna eat when they do this or that, and food is not gonna be at the forefront of their mind whenever they're doing things. Like a lot of other activities are going to fulfill them like more than that. However, that doesn't mean that they're not gonna enjoy food. They're gonna enjoy food, but it's more like in the moment, they are going to enjoy what they're eating. They're gonna take pleasure in the fact that they are fueling their bodies in a way that makes them feel good. But then when it's over, they're gonna move on, and they'll also like enjoy the social aspect around food. And having this mindset really enables them to enjoy their food in the moment and then not linger too much on that before or after, and so have a bunch of free like headspace available for other things. Another thing about naturally thin people is that they tend to value meals that are simple. Again, a bunch of them love to cook, there's no issue with that, but they like to do things that are healthy, balanced, easy, again, because they're not constantly thinking about food and trying to make like perfect meals. They know that that's not possible. They're trying to make meals that are going to fuel them, satisfy them, keep them full, and of course that are balanced and healthy, but they're not trying to spend 3 hours in the kitchen for every meal. There's also this aspect in simplicity that they're not trying to overcomplicate things and hop in like all the different diet trends and have like all the superfoods or like all the new ingredients that you need to try and all that stuff. No, they're not about that. Sure, they like to experiment, try new things, but it's also about valuing simplicity and sticking to what works. The thing when you start to overthink every meal and when you start to make every meal like super elaborate, then it's not gonna be a sustainable way of eating, and you're just gonna like overthink, and it's gonna be very hard to maintain. Another thing is that then people don't eat emotionally a lot. They don't do too much emotional eating because they have built up other mechanisms to cope with their emotions. I'm not saying that they're never gonna have some ice cream for a pick-me-up or a brownie if they need some comfort food, absolutely not. However, it's not their like first form and like automatic default mode of feeling better. They've learned to cope in a bunch of other ways, and this really helps with maintaining a healthy relationship with food and not binge eating or doing things that could then potentially affect their weight. Also, I always get comments telling me that it's easy to talk about being naturally thin when you're still young, which I understand. So I thought I would ask my mom, who is not so young anymore, and she also had 3 kids, and she has managed to stay like naturally thin throughout her whole life, so maybe she will have a few tips for you. What are your best tips for staying naturally thin?
Don't think too much about it. Don't think too much about what you eat. Don't be obsessed with food. First off, I must admit, I have good genes, for sure. But to me, what matters most, I would say, is either having good habits from the beginning, from your childhood, or getting into good eating habits. By eating habits, I mean eating in a healthy and moderate way on a regular basis, which doesn't mean that sometimes you can't overeat a little bit, or you can't eat like junk food or sweet things or things like that. I mean, I think no food should be banned just because you need to enjoy what you eat. You need to take pleasure in what you eat.
Thanks, Mom!
Very welcome.
And then this is a little bit beyond food, but something that naturally thin people do is they will leave like a naturally active lifestyle. So they're not going to be obsessed with hitting the gym every day or doing some type of like important physical exercise all the time. It's more about leading an active life, like weaving that into their lifestyle. So they're gonna walk a lot more, take the stairs a lot more, and they're gonna do a little bit of physical activity like around their house or in their yard or whatever. And even if they do like go to the gym or like go on a bike ride or do all of that, it's not gonna be like a very obsessive like 4-hour session. They're gonna weave that in throughout the week. And I've met so many like really naturally thin people who don't feel good if they haven't moved throughout their day, whatever moving may look like. And all of this is what happens when you have a healthy relationship with food, when you haven't dieted in the past, which will cause like your metabolism to be completely screwed over, when you don't see foods as a good or bad, or like hate your body or try to punish yourself or anything like that. This is what happens. But this doesn't mean that if you're not currently like that, that you can never be like that. Of course not. These are things that can be learned. So make sure that you try to incorporate these habits into your way of eating, into your lifestyle, little by little, in a way that works for you, in a way that is sustainable. Notice that in all of these habits, I didn't talk about tracking your weight or like counting calories or balancing out all your macros perfectly. It's not about that. It's about your general attitude towards food. It's about eating in a holistic way and valuing health and wellness over weight and dieting. So that's it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like it and subscribe, and see you on my next one. Bye.